Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Michelle Madrid, who's here to share with us her new book, Let Us Be Greater, A Gentle, Guided Path to Healing for Adoptees. While adoption is a lifeline of support and opportunity for countless people, can the process bring challenges and emotional issues? Well, today Michelle's here to share with us just that. Michelle Madrid is an author and host of the Electricity of You podcast. She's an international adoptee, former foster child in the UK, and an adoptee empowerment life coach who has been recognized as an Angels in Adoption honoree by the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute, and inducted into the New Mexico Women's Hall of Fame for her work in adoption. So welcome to the show, Michelle Madrid.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here, truly honored to have this moment to speak with you and share with you.
Well, congratulations on the release of your new book. I understand it's getting such great praise, and no wonder, because I found it to be such an empowering and just thoughtful book.
Oh, thank you very much. It feels really good that it's out in the world. That, was the intention I held from word one, is this moment where, I can share my story as a former foster in the United Kingdom, international adoptee, and the journey of that and the lessons that I've learned along the way. And I'm here to, share with others because there are pain points along this journey. And I think it's really important to talk about those things. The saying, the wound is where the wisdom is found. I truly believe that. And this book shares that part of my journey, both shadow and light, and the journey of other adult adoptees, and then expresses and shares approaches, modalities of healing, visualizations, exercises to help you reconnect with a part of yourself that may have been disconnected along this journey of adoption.
Well, I think that might be part of the reason why so many people are gravitating towards this book. You don't see a lot of information out there that really addresses this, especially when we look at, coming from an adult age.
It is so true. I think oftentimes, we see adoption and the life experience of the adoptee as beginning at the moment the adoption is finalized. And we don't talk about, and we haven't talked about, beginning to talk about the chapter before that. And what happens to the adopted person before adoption enters their lives? I always say with adoption, something had to come apart before something else could come together. A loss occurred for adoption to have to happen, right? And so we, for decades and decades and decades, have not talked about that part of the adoptee experience. And so as adoptees, we've grown up with a lot of grief buried inside of us, a sense of loss that we haven't been able to truly have safe space and opportunity to identify and explore what that means to us. And so we can then, live this journey of moving through life with these buried parts of ourselves and not knowing how to access them, but just understanding and feeling that they show up in a myriad of ways. And getting to the wound, getting to what I call the points of pain that I outline in Let Us Be Greater, that adoptees can experience and often do experience, I think is really important. We have to talk about these things so that we can truly begin and step on the path of healing and becoming who we're here to be. I think as human beings, that's what we want. We want to identify, who am I and what am I here to do? And I think when we don't have opportunity to explore those moments in our lives, truly adopted or not adopted, then there's a piece of us that feels missing and, still broken. And we can move through those things. We can And we have the power, and I remind adoptees to look into the darkness, and we must, so that we can arrive to a place of light and transformation in our lives.
Where do you think are some of the really pain points that adoptees go through, especially when they're first adopted or they learn that they're first adopted?
And I think there's a sense of confusion. And I say that, and I can share with you for me what that was like. I was adopted out of foster care in the United Kingdom. Inside of foster care, I was given a lot of labels: difficult to place, illegitimate, unwanted, dark. Um, it seemed as if there were people around me who were identifying me in a way that was heavy, and it felt dark. And those labels sort of attached themselves to my very young spirit. I didn't know what to do with that. And so there was a sense of confusion about who I was. There was a sense of confusion that was just on a cellular level of my worthiness in the world, my ability to feel welcome in the world and comfortable in my own skin. Beyond that, after I was adopted, my name was changed to Michelle. Before adoption, my name was Julia Dawn. And I remember as a little girl not being able to verbalize, but feeling very much inside a sense of loss for this little girl that I once was, Julia Dawn. I didn't know how to grieve her, where to place her. I often say, as an adult, I look back at that little girl I was, and I think, it was kind of living between two shores of identity, Julia Dawn and Michelle, and I felt somehow stranded in the middle, not knowing which shore to swim toward. And it was like living, but not quite. I just felt like I wasn't, I didn't have a sense of being able to bridge the gap between those two identities. And so I think there is a sense of confusion as young adoptees that we can feel, and not knowing where to place that confusion, how to express that confusion, and a sense of responsibility for pleasing our adoptive parents, because we're often told, oh, you should be so grateful. I was told that you should be so grateful that someone took you in. How kind of your parents, and to do something like that. And I'm not saying that that isn't true. Elements of that are not absolutely true, and I am grateful for the life that I've been given. But it doesn't mean that it didn't come with pain. And sometimes when, as young adoptees, we're told, just be grateful, what we're not able to do then is get to the grief. And adoption is not so one-sided. It is multi-layered. And I think as adopted people, what we ask is that we can first and foremost, in our own way, get to the both and of this lived experience, and understand that there is gratitude that we hold, but that there is also grief that we hold that must be felt, safely expressed, explored in order to move on in our lives. I think that's really very, very key. But early on, it's the confusion and just that sense of unexpressed grief that we're not quite sure where to place.
I would think some of the secrecy as well that I
Mm.
guess families tend to hold can really be a lot for an adoptee to bear.
Absolutely. I think secrecy is a very, very heavy weight. And truth, the truth will set you free. Right. I write about that in one of the chapters in my book, about hearing that when I was about 13 years old, that the truth will set you free. And I just believe that innately we know as adoptees, that there is a truth inside of us that we want to connect to and come out and live, out loud. That truth of who we are, the truth of our story. I recently, spoke at an event for a nonprofit organization, and in that speech, I talk about, the importance of connecting to the light of truth within ourselves, and, ridding this secrecy, which is just heavy. It's heavy, a heavy weight of shame. If your story is held secret, if somehow a part of your life is, taboo to talk about, then that's a feeding ground for shame to grow and self-blame. And I think moving past the secrecy is really key. I do believe in openness in adoption. When and if the adoptee seeks that out, I believe in truth in all areas of life. And so why not have truth in adoption as well? Truth that supports adoptees, that allows them to feel a wholeness within themselves and allows them to move forward in the light of truth, who they are and what they are here to do and the work that they're here to carry out in the world. I just don't believe we can get there when there's a veil of secrecy that surrounds us all of our lives.
You have a question in your book that just had me kind of stop for a moment. And it's, as an adoptee, what baggage are you carrying that does not belong to you? My goodness, how powerful is that?
Yeah, thank you. And it's a question that I had to, ask myself at one point in my life when I think the weight of what everyone else around me had told me about my adoption, the story of my first family, my first parents. It seemed to come across as, my first parents were somehow bad and they were flawed. And so if that were the case, then wouldn't I too be somehow bad and flawed, just innately tainted? And I tell you, that was such a heavy weight to carry. And it is not unlike the heaviness that other adult adoptees carry with them too. And it does come from that veil of secrecy and the not knowing part of your adoption story and your earliest history. And so with, putting the baggage down is that moment when I realized that the baggage that I was carrying might not have been mine to carry, if you will. There are things that people may say to us, maybe not say to us, maybe do to us, or maybe something that we never felt, that warm embrace or that welcome in our life that can really weigh us down. Limiting beliefs. I mean, my goodness, the labels that I was given in foster care, I believed were true. I mean, after all, they were given to me by adults who knew better, right? They were older, they were adults, and I was just a kid. So if they said I was somehow difficult to place, then isn't that so? Isn't that true? And I realized that at some point in my life that was the baggage of others and it wasn't mine to carry. And so I do ask that question in the book. And I move the reader through an exercise called putting down the baggage, where they can really connect with a limiting thought, something that's happened to them in their lives that they put at some point on their young shoulders and are still carrying around today. And through looking at that limiting belief, that hurt, that wound, that pain point, asking themselves, what has that looked like for me in the past? How has it impacted me and those I love? How has this baggage, this weight, this burden, how is it impacting me and those I love right here, right now in the present? And then looking out into the future, if I continue to carry this baggage with me, how will it impact me and those I love in the future? And to really step into that place, to see it, to feel it, to hear the sounds of that. And then ultimately to ask yourself, what if I put the baggage down? What if in this moment I loved myself enough to free myself of this weight that I've been carrying around for years and years, decades and decades, perhaps it was never mine to carry, forgiving it all and putting it down and moving forward and then looking at your life right here, right now. How does it feel to put that baggage down? And then, future forward, what will it be like to move forward in my life without the weight of this baggage weighing me down? It's a powerful exercise, and it is a profound, life-changing question because it can help us shift our focus. And I truly believe where focus goes, energy flows. If we're focused on a limiting belief, the energy of that will meet us. But if we can shift from that, if we can literally change the channel on that programming as adopted people and begin to empower ourselves and choose our own thoughts and choose our own beliefs, my goodness, the transformation of that and the light that can be ignited through that, I believe will transform not only in individual lives, but it can and holds the power to transform the collective and how we all look at adoption in the future.
When we look at adoptees, what are some of the common, pains, baggage? I'm not even sure what to call it, but what's some of the common things that hold them back?
Well, certainly in my book, I outline 8 of them, and these are points of pain, first and foremost, that I believe through bringing these things out into the light and through working, reading Let Us Be Greater and working through the exercises, approaches, visualizations in the book, we can begin to transform those points of pain into points of light. And that truly is the intention for this book, to empower adoptees in this way. But in my own life experience and in coaching, mentoring, guiding hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of adoptees, in the work that I do, I identified 8 pain points, and they are first I outline the pain of feeling unwelcome in the world. Just that sense that I think we gather as far back as in the womb of something not quite being right. I think we feel a lot of, what our first mothers feel while we're in the womb. We feel what they feel in the world. We experience what they experience in the world. I read that when you're in the womb, it's not mother and child, it's truly mother-child. And so it only makes sense to me that we would feel the stress and the duress that our first mothers perhaps moved through as they were making decisions about our lives, the life of their unborn child. And I think we can come into the world with a sense of being unwelcome, a sense of being perhaps not fully wanted or fully embraced into the life that we've been given. There's a separation that we sense that takes work to, sort of reinvite ourselves into our lives. And I move through an exercise in the book where we truly do that. We write ourselves an invitation back into living this life that we've been given and welcoming ourselves into the fullness of life. The pain of broken bonds and this deep sense of loss that we were touching on earlier. The pain of being denied access to truth. Of course, you touched on that secrecy. Secrecy is so hard. It does so much damage. Truth is so key along the journey for adoptees, but truly in this journey of life, adoptee or non-adoptee, truth is what we're all, I think, seeking and hungering for. The pain of familial rejection and words that harm. Certainly, adoptees can be labeled. There can be limiting words, limiting beliefs that are attached to that. Moving through those things, transforming those things is key. The pain of distrust. If your first parents left you, then those are the ones you should have been able to trust the most. So how do you get back to a place of trust when everything around you seems fragile? That's something that adoptees often need to work through and come to a place of trust, which really starts with, I think, self-trust, being able to trust yourself, the decisions that you make, the thoughts that you think. Trusting ourselves in our lives as adoptees is essential. The pain of banished biology, feeling so disconnected from that place within. The pain of pleasing others versus pleasing the self, and the pain of lack of transparency and acceptance. Those are the 8 points of pain that I move the reader through within Let Us Be Greater. And I should probably add, that these are points of pain and places of hurt that can cause challenges in the adoptee's life. That's usually when they arrive to me, trying to figure out why there is a hurt that they can't identify, or why are relationships so hard to feel connected to really trust, ourselves and others within relationship. They're points of pain that I do most often see in the adult adoptees I coach, but I do within this book, I set the course to compassionately and soulfully heal and reframe these primary pain points. And again, the goal is to transform them into points of light for the adoptees.
I love how in your book you have this proclamation that they can make. I am safe. I am loved. I am wanted. I am welcome in my life. Why is it important to say those things?
I think those are so important to declare out loud for yourself and to truly connect with when those parts of ourselves can feel so disconnected along this journey of relinquishment and removal. To remind ourselves that, yes, I am safe and I am wanted and I am welcome in this life. I am loved. Those things must start within ourselves. I didn't love myself for a very long time. I didn't feel welcome in my life for a very long time. I didn't trust myself for a very long time, and I certainly didn't feel wanted. And so arriving to that place of self-acceptance and self-love and being able to declare those words out loud is powerful. Words matter. They can either harm us or heal us. I think we all could probably come to an agreement in that way. We've experienced words that harm us and diminish us, hurt us. We have also felt the love and the healing and the light of words that lift us up and affirm us. As adoptees, it's so important for me and many I coach each and every day to declare those words out loud. I am wanted in the life that I've been given. I am wanted here today, right here, right now. I am loved. I love myself. I am wanted in this life that I've been given, and I'm going to show up fully in this life. I want to experience every moment of this life and not to feel doled down or numbed out. And I have the capacity and the capability to show up in that way, alive and alit in my life. Every adoptee has that potential. And I think ultimately, as human beings, we all want that to feel fully connected and alive in our lives.
Do adoptees tend to find themselves somewhat disconnected from what it is that they want in life?
Yes, it's been my experience personally, and it has also been my experience along the coaching journey, mentoring journey, guidance journey that I'm so honored to carry out within this adoptee constellation. A disconnection from feeling wanted in our lives and believing that we're worthy of having the things that we want. Because somehow at some point it was suggested to us that perhaps we're not worthy of our heart's desires and the things that we hold as treasures within us that we dream of, desire. I do believe that requires getting back to the little person you were before adoption, your first me, as I call it. That work, that child work, I can tell you, has been so transformational for me. And I see it in the lives of those I coach, to get back to that little person and to reconnect to her or his heart's desires and the things that they dreamed of and wanted, because those dreams, those wants, those desires are carried with us as we grow into the adults we are today. They don't go away. But at some point, we were given a message that we're not worthy of having those things, and that our wants, our desires, that could be rooted in just wondering where our first parents might be, who they were, what they were like. Oh, I want to know that. I want to connect to that place. I want to know those people. Somehow, some way, we were told that that's not okay. And so we disconnect from that desire. And then I think what happens is the desires of our dreams and our goals, what we're here to do, what we would like to do, we also disconnect from as well. And reconnecting to that, it does start, in my belief, in going back to your earliest self reconnecting to that little one's dreams and desires, and then moving forward from there. And really honoring yourself in the knowing that you are worthy of having anything and everything you dream of.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Michelle Madrid in regards to her new book, Let Us Be Greater, a gentle, guided path to healing for adoptees. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Dr. Richard London, who has 25 years of experience being known as the Man of Steel with the Heart of Velvet, presents the Life Wellness System, The Road to Yes, a mentoring system that brings you to becoming a wellness heir. Imagine having wealth, wellness, love, peace, and spirituality in abundance and balance now. Visit doctorateoflife.com or call 720-213-8021 for a free 15-minute wellness evaluation.
Hi, this is Jana Wilson, author of Wise Little One, Learning to Love and Listen to My Inner Child, a best-selling prescriptive memoir in inner child healing. I'm also the founder of the Emotional Healing System. The inner child, simply put, is your feelings, both positive and negative. If you'd like to learn to love and listen to your wise little one, pick up my book at Amazon or visit my website at janawilson.com. It's never too late to have a happy childhood.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. They used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. We're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
Looking for a page-turner? Cozy up to a fantasy adventure romance trilogy with The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper by Mary Kay Savarese. The second novel in the Star Writers trilogy, The Star Writers Club, is coming soon. Take the journey. Connect with Mary at www.maryksavarese.com. Her books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores.
Pandemonium. Fast forward 20 years. A U.S. president seizes control of all U.S. missiles, the power grid, the banking system, and every computer in America as he hides in an underground bunker. Pandemonium, a captivating sci-fi thriller where a hidden war, psychics, aliens, artificial intelligence, and transcendental love collide with the latest media technology. Pandemonium, live to all devices. Get your copy on paperback or digital. Free sample at getpsychic.org.
With Breath Hub, you'll experience the transformative power of breath as it harmonizes your body, mind, and spirit. Recommended by experts in fitness, sports, psychology, and medicine. Meet the scientific way of being well. Breath Hub. Breathe better, live better.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Michelle Madrid, who's sharing with us her new book, Let Us Be Greater, a gentle, guided path to healing for adoptees. In your book, you talk about disenfranchised grief. And I know we touched on the meaning of that a little earlier, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more of that because I think it's such a key point to discuss.
Yes, thank you. Disenfranchised grief is when others don't validate or recognize a loss or the subsequent grieving process that comes along with that loss. And I do think that this very much applies to the way decades and decades and decades of adoptees have had to experience their loss. Adoptees have been told, as I was, and they are still told today, that they shouldn't be grieving. What's there to grieve? You should just be grateful. That they shouldn't spend their time wondering about or grieving over what or who lives inside of their earliest chapter. I call it their chapter 1, and the valid feelings that come with adoption loss and the importance of grieving that loss. I think that, the awareness of disenfranchised grief is beginning to increase, but it's safe to say that the current and I think widely held shared opinion is that adoption is solely blessing and that adoptees should just be happy about it and move on. And I think the result of that one-sided narrative, a more simplistic narrative, is that the adoptee can't openly and vulnerably talk about their loss and their grief, and they can feel very much alone as they're told what they should or should not feel. And, it's interesting. I think that social media is certainly beginning to open up pathways of connection and communication among adoptees. And I think one of the greatest awakenings through social media is the knowing that as adoptees, we aren't alone. This knowing is supporting our community and expressing our grief. And I think the truth of what's been locked away inside of ourselves for decades and decades. But here's what I know for sure. Disenfranchised grief only serves to bury the adoptee's spirit, their light, deep within the broken bonds of their story. And so within this place of disenfranchised grief, adoptees can't really openly express or experience what they need to feel and what they need to grieve in order to move forward in their lives and illuminate their passions and their purpose. I think this is such an important topic when we consider that, adoptees are 4 times more likely to unalive themselves than non-adoptees. And studies done in other countries are closely mirroring that statistic. There is urgent need to free the adoptee voice so that we can help ease suffering and save lives. So I think we have to arrive at a place where we offer to adoptees the space to safely grieve what's been lost and to say, I understand that your loss is real. I know that your grief is real. How can I support you? How can I help you? There is great need to recognize the loss that adoptees experience. I just don't think we can ignore this anymore because this grief is real. This loss is real. And we have to help adoptees safely express that so they can move forward and heal.
I think that your book is so profound because of the way it talks about really considering the adoptee's feelings as opposed to in many ways just kind of glossing over what's going on. And, now you're adopted, everything's great when there's a lot of grief to work through there. And even, I'm kind of curious, even if someone, let's say they're older and don't remember being adopted, how do they process that grief?
Oh, I write in the book about a woman who came to me in her 60s, and she was saying that she had just felt all of her life this sense of living life at arm's length, and that she remembers growing up in a home where She knew that she was adopted, but they didn't talk about it. You just didn't talk about being adopted. And so she moved through life sort of avoiding the feelings that she had deep inside of herself. And she said, I've just come to realize through connecting with other adoptees, primarily on social media, that there is this thing coming out of the fog. And she said, I didn't know that was a real thing, but now that I know, it makes sense to me now, because I've had these moments of wanting to question, my feelings and who am I and what am I here to do? And what about, my first family? She said, I obviously knew that I had a first family. I mean, it only makes sense that I would, but I never got to talk about them or grieve them or feel them moving, inside of me, pulsing through my veins, if you will. And so she talks about how freeing it was to connect with other adoptees and learn about this phrase that we say, coming out of the fog. And it means when we arrive at a sense of knowing within us as adoptees that urges us to move forward out of the fogginess of what we innately know but have been conditioned to avoid and forget in some ways, to move beyond that and step into the light of clarity for ourselves and our lives. And I believe that coming out of the fog, F-O-G, means frequently observing grief. It's when the adoptee, whether they are 6 or 60, begins to observe a sense of grief inside of them, a feeling, and they begin to get curious about it. And it is so important that they have safe space to explore it. And so what I say to those adoptees who are coming into a recognizing that maybe this adoptee experience has been impacting my life in ways that have not been healthy and whole for me. And maybe I need to look at these places inside of myself in order to step into the next version of who I'm here to be. That it is so important to listen to that and to to understand that frequently observing your grief, honoring that grief, is truly a celebration of your life, because you're beginning to feel all the things that have been locked away for years and years and years. And is it hard? Yes, but it's so worth it. And you have just a community, an army of adoptees around you who are here to help support you and cheer you on and remind you that you're not alone. And yes, you too can move through these places. I hope that answers your question. But absolutely, I think that at some point or another, we do meet up with a time where we begin to wonder, is this why my relationships aren't working? Is this why I don't feel happy in my life? And I'm not saying it's adoption. I'm just saying that understanding that there are pain points that come with this adoptee experience, with being removed, relinquished, with being placed in another family, with leaving one thing, the hellos and the goodbyes of adoption, the entries and the exits of this adoptee experience can root within us these pain points. And they must and should be explored, because each and every adoptee is worthy of this exploration. And no matter when or where you come to this awakening, coming out of the fog, if you will, it's never too late. Don't gloss by it. I love that word that you used, because it is so true. We have glossed over this conversation, this corner of the adoption conversation. And it's one that we must pull the gloss off of. We must get real and raw with each other, because as I said earlier, lives are depending on it. And certainly each and every adoptee deserves happiness. They deserve answers. They deserve truth and arriving at their own beautiful, light-filled truth.
Do adoptees tend to have a sense of distress just because they've been through so much that And maybe there's family secrets to pile on top of that, and just guilt and other things that happen. Is it hard for them to get to a place of trust?
Absolutely it is. Going to back to what I said earlier about this sense of, oh, if my first parents left, I should have been able to trust them the most, then how can I trust anything or anyone else? And ultimately, how can I even trust myself if I'm not really sure of why my first parents left? I used to truly believe that it was something I had done. Even as an infant, must have done something. I must have been flawed in some way that could not be overcome, that would cause my first parents to leave. And because there was this secrecy around me about my story, my adoptive mother would say, I took you from a very hard place. Just be grateful and move forward. And you really don't need to know about, what happened in the past. But I did need to know. For me and many other adoptees, we do need to know because it is part of our story. Our journey is part of our truth. It's like writing a book from chapter 2. I don't have chapter 1's information, and I need that to write a complete and fleshed out, beautiful, work of art, if you will. I need that part of myself to fill the hole. And why can't I have it? What's so wrong with that part of my story that I can't access what is innately mine? And so these are questions that manifest, and there's just an atmosphere of distrust that grows. How can I trust anyone when secrets are being kept from me? How can I trust myself to make decisions about my own life, who I am and who I'm here to be, when I don't have all the information that I so desire within myself? And so there's just a feeling of being cut off and disempowered because others hold the answers, but that secrecy is still, all around you. And so distrust grows. I think we have to get to the truth in order to start building the foundation of trust. And I do, move the reader in the book through, the ability to trust ourselves. And there's a lot we don't know, but what do we know? What do we know? And when you go within and you sit in stillness and you connect to that light within yourself, when you allow yourself to do that, you can feel truth bubbling up inside of you. The truth of, I have a heart that beats for me 100,000 times a day. I don't even have to think about it. It beats for me. If my heart is for me, then what can be against me? If I can trust my heart and it's beating for me, then perhaps that's one thing I can hold on to trust and start building from there. So what is it that we do know innately about ourselves that, I can trust in this breath that I'm taking that fills me up. I can trust in the blue sky that I'm looking at right here, right now, out my window as I speak with you. I can trust in elements of my life that are here right now and that remind me that there is light in the darkness, that there is beauty in the brokenness. And if I can begin to trust in that, then I think I have traction to move forward in my life and build, pebble by pebble, brick by brick, a foundation of trust to stand on. I believe that every adoptee can do that.
And then start that healing process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that every adoptee is a hero, and they're capable of healing their pain, emerging from limiting belief, reframing their experiences, and overcoming any obstacle. We are heroes. And I didn't believe that for a long time. As an adoptee, I believed that my story weakened me. It was the thing that weakened me. And I realize now that there's power in the imperfection. My story, like everyone else's story, is imperfect. None of us hold a perfect story. And I think that's a really beautiful thing because the miracle is in the mess. The power is in the imperfection. And when we're willing to look at those things and ask ourselves, okay, what is this imperfect part of my story here to teach me? What is it here to show me? How is it here to grow me? And get really curious about that. I think curiosity is the cure. It's the cure. It's the healing balm. And as we get curious and as we connect to the hero within ourselves as adoptees, I just believe we can overcome. I believe we can overcome these pain points and truly step into the light of our lives.
Do adoptees tend to kind of keep things bottled up because they feel like they're the only ones going through this experience?
I think that's definitely one big part of it. You question yourself, you doubt yourself, right? Maybe you don't trust yourself and you're thinking, is it just me? And certainly it doesn't support when the wider narrative of adoption does sort of show it as all shine. You know, when I was growing up, articles in the paper just showed this, you know, these perfect adoptive families. And my adoptive family wasn't perfect. No family is perfect. My adoptive father struggled with alcoholism, and life inside of that home was really hard. There was verbal abuse and explosive moments each and every day. And it was a heartbreaking place to be, to have a parent who was so wounded himself and who would, you know, the saying, hurting people hurt people. He was truly hurting, and he hurt those inside of our home. That feeling of not being able to truly express what we're feeling as adoptees, you know, that narrative that is so focused on the flaws of the first family and how your mother maybe didn't want you or couldn't keep you, or your first father wasn't present, or, you know, where do you go as an adoptee when that narrative exists? And then there's this narrative of perfection after adoption. But you're inside of a home like I was, where it was far from perfect. My dad was an alcoholic. My mother suffered that emotional, you know, the emotion of that each and every day. And I would, you know, empty bottles for her in the morning before I went to school, and, you know, bottles of my dad's booze. And I've coached other adoptees who've had to do similar things inside of their adoptive homes. And there was so much secrecy around that, so much, you know, protection of that brokenness. Where do you go to talk about these things out in the open? You know, and I think that it's so important for adoptees to understand that they are not alone. And this gets back to your question. When you feel like you're so alone and that maybe you're the only one experiencing this, there's such a weight of self-blame and self-shame that, you know, kind of envelops you. And you feel like you're just treading water. Because why can't I have that perfect adoptive family? Or why can't I feel like they say I'm supposed to feel just so grateful? You know, where do you go to get real? And inside of that sense of loneliness and isolation is so much pain. And when you realize and recognize that, oh my goodness, there are others out there who have felt this very same way, who've experienced these points of pain, who have felt lost and alone, who have mourned and grieved silently in the dark of their bedroom, who have struggles with their adoptive families, and who don't necessarily believe that their first families could have been that bad. I mean, where do you go to get real about that? And so this is such an important conversation. We have to get real in order to help adoptees to heal and thrive in their lives. The truth of the matter is, nothing about adoption is perfect. It is messy. A child was taken from their first families, was removed and placed into another life. And that comes with a grief and a loss and a confusion and a host of emotions that we can't just be expected to keep bottled inside of ourselves, so that a narrative can continue to be reinforced out there in the world, that when you adopt, you get this perfect child, or that these families that are brought together by adoption are these perfect families. That just doesn't exist. And I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that's not real. And what adoptees are asking for and beginning to cry out for, and I think this is where the tipping point is happening, is we are no longer going to sit within our own silence and be quieted and let this narrative continue, because we know how much it's hurt us, and we don't want it to hurt adoptees in the future, or right here in the here and now. If we can get real and say there's gratitude and grief in adoption, there's loss and there is gain in adoption, there is shadow and there is shine in adoption, I think we will all evolve into a much healthier place. Adoptees will grow into people who feel truly aligned with the truth of who they are. And I think we can definitely forge healthier families that are built through adoption. It's just the time. I think that, here we are in 2023, looking at 2024 just around the corner, and we must get real about adoption. We can no longer allow a one-sided narrative to continue. We must peel back the layers and let the light in, because when we do that, I just believe we can transform this conversation. I know I'm rambling. I get very passionate about this, but it's just so true. And the message is, let's please get real. Let's get real. Let's get raw. Let's talk about all of this. Let's push our egos aside and be willing to hear another person's perspective and experience, step into their shoes, so that we can start gaining an understanding that will be of massive transformation.
It seems that there's so much that goes on during the adoption process, both for the people who are doing the adoption and the adoptee. Where does forgiveness come in? Because I know in your book you talk about the light of forgiveness, and I'd love for you to share about that with our listeners.
Forgiveness is key. It's, first coming to a place of just forgiveness of self. I was so hard on myself for such a long time. I blamed myself for every element of my adoption journey. I blamed myself for the reason I felt I was the reason that my adoptive father drank, because I heard stories that he really didn't start drinking until I had been adopted. And I thought, well, here again, I did something and I don't know what it was to cause this person to leave me or abandon me in that way. And there was so much that I needed to forgive and didn't know how to forgive, because I felt like, how can I forgive someone if they don't say I'm sorry? How do you do that? And you realize as you go and as you grow and as you do this deep healing work, that that's not what it's about at all. That it's about letting go, releasing the things inside of you that are ultimately hurting yourself. And if you never get the I'm sorry, if you never get the acknowledgement from that person that they are aware that they hurt you and that they're sorry in the doing, are we just supposed to sit around with that bitterness growing inside of us? And I just don't think that's freedom. And so first I had to get to that place of, I need to love myself enough to forgive myself for holding on to things that I probably should have let go a long time, no judgment, a long time ago. Forgiving myself for holding on to these things, to carrying the burden and the weight of others. Forgiving others for what they did, knowing that, yes, they hurt me, but I gotta let it go. I gotta heal myself, and forgiveness is the key. It really is, to liberating ourselves into a whole other way of being. And there is light in forgiveness. I talk about in the book an ancient Hawaiian prayer called Ho'oponopono. Maybe you've heard of it, but it is understanding that when someone else triggers us, when someone else does something to us that causes a reaction, that if we can go within ourselves and get curious and ask ourselves, what about that comment or that behavior triggered me? What is it inside of myself that I need to explore? And so the prayer of Ho'oponopono is, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And you're not saying necessarily, I'm sorry to someone who has hurt you, right? It's just going inside and setting an atmosphere of forgiveness by saying, I love you, to the universe, to God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for anything within me that caused that reaction in that moment. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. That's the prayer to the divine. Please forgive me and thank you. And I say these 4 things over and over again. If someone cuts me off in my car, I say the prayer Ho'oponopono. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. What you did triggered me. And so I know there's something inside of myself that needs to be cleansed. I'm willing and open to do that. And so I pray the prayer Ho'oponopono. I prayed this prayer when my adoptive father passed away in 2016. He never said, I'm sorry to me. But in the few moments before his passing, he opened his eyes and he looked at me. He could no longer speak, but I knew in his eyes he was trying to say, I'm sorry. And I looked at him. We were on FaceTime. I was not physically present with my father when he passed, but I looked at him on FaceTime and I said, it's okay. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I said it over and over and over. And I could see an energy around him just shift. And there was a peace and there was a sense of presence and a knowing that all was forgiven. It all was forgiven. And it changed everything. In fact, the people who were taking care of my father at the time of his passing said, we've seen hundreds and hundreds of passings in this work that we do, but we've never seen one so peaceful. And the weeks leading up to my father's death were far from peaceful. It was a very traumatic, difficult, challenging time. But in the moment with him and this prayer of forgiveness, this prayer of Ho'oponopono, there was a shift that he felt, that I felt. And together we just released a lot. And it was divine. It was divine and it was light-filled. I share that moment only because I do believe in the light of forgiveness. And I urge adoptees to begin first and foremost by forgiving themselves and let the light of forgiveness then sort of light their path onward to forgive others. And I know it's hard. It's like, how could I forgive? How could I forgive? Right? I get that. I've been there too. But holding on to that is not an expansive place to be. And you deserve to live within the expansiveness of the potential that you hold for your life. And forgiveness opens the door to that. I truly believe that.
Well, Michelle, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your book, Let Us Be Greater?
Thank you. The website is themichellemadrid.com, themichellemadrid.com. I hope you'll come and join the community there. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have a beautiful visualization exercise that is my gift to you. When you sign up to join the community, it truly is a visualization that helps you to connect to the light of who you are and to step into that light, reclaiming the electricity of you. That is the brand, the electricity of you. I am all about reconnecting to those places inside of ourselves that have felt disconnected through the hurts and the disappointments in this life, whether you are adopted or not. I'm also on Instagram at the Michelle Madrid. Please come and find me there. You can also find information about the book, Let Us Be Greater, A Gentle Guided Path to Healing for Adoptees on my website, or also on Amazon, wherever books are sold. I hope that you will consider this book and the work that I do for yourself or for someone you love. You know, each and every one of us is connected to adoption. Whether it's a friend or a relative, a partner, whether you are indeed that adoptee looking for support and guidance, we can all benefit from this conversation. And so I thank all of your listeners for leaning in and staying with us throughout our conversation. And I thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Michelle. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Let Us Be Greater, A Gentle Guided Path to Healing for Adoptees. Let Us Be Greater is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. You can also purchase this book directly from the publisher, New World Library, at newworldlibrary.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.